Chapter 21. Salvador sat beside his mom. The bus rumbled along, no one talking, everything waiting for Miss Vega's news. "Your tia doesn't have jobs for us," she said to Salvador, "and she's not in St. Louis." "What?" Salvador asked. Miss Vega shook her head and her eyes narrowed. "It's that Chris." She said the name like a curse word. I told her he was no good. Then she spat another word, this time in Spanish, and I'm not going to repeat it here because I'm not sure what it means, but based on how she said it and how Salvador's eyebrows went up when she said it, I'm like 100% sure it is a curse word. Salvador looked over at the rest of us. "Chris is, my aunt's boyfriend. He was the one who said he knew someone who'd hire her and Mom." "So, where is she?" I asked. Miss Vega took a deep breath, then said, "Petoskey." And for a second I thought it was another Spanish curse word, but then she added, "She's in Petoskey, Michigan." "Michigan?" Salvador blurted. Miss Vega nodded. "See, that's where Chris says he can find us jobs now." She rolled her eyes, then she closed them and shook her head. Her lips pursed tight. Salvador put an arm around her shoulders. "Miss Vega," Rodeo said, "don't you worry 1 second about this. Michigan's a beautiful state, one of my favorites. It's no big deal at all for us to swing up and drop you off up there." My mouth went dry. "What?" I explained. "We can't go to Michigan?" All the heads turned to me. I hadn't totally planned on shouting that out. It just kind of flew out of me in the moment. I stammered for something to say to fill the silence left by my words. Isn't that like, out of our way?" "Yeah, yikes, that was even worse." I knew I sounded like a total jerk. Even Lester was looking at me with a "Girl, are you serious right now" look. But I was desperately trying to picture a map of our straight shot route across the U.S., and desperately trying to figure how a zigzag detour to Michigan would look on it, and desperately trying to remember how many hours I had left before I lost that memory box forever. "Out of our way?" Rodeo said. "Coyote." Ouch. He said my name in a way I'm not sure I'd ever heard before, or at least not in a long, long time. Surprised, disappointed, sad. My face burned red. I was glad he was driving, glad I didn't have to look into his eyes when he said my name that way. Salvador was looking at me. I could see his mind racing. He knew my secret. "No," he said quick. "You guys don't have to take us. It's too far. We can take a bus like we're gonna do." That's Salvador. He's a good one. But Rodeo shook his head. "No way, brother. You're already on a bus, remember? We ain't gonna abandon you folks in some dirty old bus station where you're already on a perfectly good bus right here. A little side trip okay with you, Lester?" "Fine by me, man." Rodeo made eye contact with me in the rear-view mirror. "Coyote?" he asked, his voice careful and testing. "Any reason we shouldn't take our friends here to where they need to be?" I don't know how long it took me to answer. Honestly, it was probably like 3 seconds. It felt like a heck of a lot more, though, because in those 3 seconds, about 1,000 thoughts shot through my mind. The memory box, sure, and the map, and the ticking hands of the clock, yeah, and the fact that I had a secret to keep, and that if I said, "Well, actually, we do need to abandon these folks in a dirty old bus station because I've been lying to you the whole time, and we're actually heading back to the one place in the world where you don't want to go," my whole quest would be dead in the water anyway. But I also remembered Miss Vega unlocking her car in a gas station parking lot to let me in to hide before she even knew me. And Salvador with his listening eyes and his secret sharing, and his first thing in the morning apologies. Keeping my secret and getting that box was something I had to do. But maybe so was helping Salvador and his mom. "Come on, Coyote." There wasn't no maybe about it. "Of course not," I answered. I stretched a big grin onto my face and hoped it was big enough to hide the butterflies that were flat out rioting in my stomach. I pointed with both hands out the windshield toward the horizon. "Michigan it is." Rodeo looked at me a second in the mirror, then smiled and nodded. "Chart us a new course, Lester," he called. "We got a family to reunite." I could only fake a smile for about another 4 or 5 seconds. So when Lester started tapping on his phone, I got up quick and headed back to my room. I was all sweaty and nauseous, and I needed to see a map ASAP. I'd just flopped down onto my bed and opened the atlas when Salvador hissed, "Coyote, can I come in?" through my curtain door. "Yeah," I answered, and before his body was through the curtain, he was already talking a couple miles a minute. "Coyote, I am so sorry. Listen, you don't have to take us there. I know you need to get home. And if I tell my mom what's going on, I know she'll make Rodeo drop us off and—" "Shut up a second," I interrupted, not looking up from the map under my fingers. I traced a line from where we were in Tennessee up through Michigan and over to Washington, comparing it with my eyes to the straight line we had been traveling. "I think we can do this." I started to measure the distance with my fingers when something dropped onto the map, making me jump. "Here, use this." It was Salvador's phone. He already had the little map thing open and everything. "Just punch in where you want to go." I snatched it up and got to tapping. "Okay," I narrated while I worked. "So we're almost to Chattanooga, Tennessee right now. From here to Poplin Springs, that's home, is 37 hours. If we add Petoskey into the middle of it, the drive time goes up to—" I blinked, checked it again. Then I beamed at Salvador. "What?" he demanded. "How long?" "Just 45 hours. That's only 8 hours longer. We can totally do this." Relief washed over me like a sunrise. Lord, I'd almost blown my secret, endangered my missing, and abandoned my friend for nothing. "Are you sure? I thought your timeline was, like, pretty tight." Salvador's forehead was all crinkled up in concern. "It is, but we had a few hours of wiggle room." Salvador still looked doubtful. I stood up to look him in the eye. "This is important. You and your mom getting to your aunt safe, I mean. It's worth it, man. More than worth it. We'll get you there." I held my fist out toward him. He looked at it a second, eyes unsure, then back up at me. "You're a good friend, Coyote," he said quietly. Then he bumped my fist and flashed me a shy kind of smile and turned and walked out of my room. I let his words tingle in my heart for just a second. Friend wasn't a word I'd heard all that often. It is one of those words that once you hear it, you want to hear it a lot more. But I didn't have much time for tingling. I chewed on my lip, thinking. I hadn't had many extra hours to start with, and I'd just given away 8 of them. For this whole thing to work, we were going to have to do a lot more driving and a little less sleeping, which meant it was time for me to have a heart-to-heart with Lester Washington.